So the fourth line, it says about the Omer, you're below Yasek Krichos, Ella Manichan Svasayim, that when you go, the Mishnah told us that when you go to reap the grain for the Omer, so you go and you take it, but you don't stack it up. 1 second. Yeah, that when you go these 3 times that we permit you to do the reaping before the Omer. So one is the saplings, that grain that's not going to be used, or there's forbidden mixtures, or there's a shiva house outside, or there's a shear outside. So there you're allowed to cut down the grain, but you should not then put into piles or tie it up, bundle it up. Rather just leave it the way it is. So why? My timer, the common it's a permissibility, but as much as you can, you shouldn't work too much on it. Do the minimal amount, get it out of your way, and that's it. Because really it's forbidden. We allow it, but we allow it just so do what you have to do, and then after that, leave it. So now we say mitzvah omer lahavi minakama. The Torah tells us that the mitzvah is to bring it from the crop that's standing, from when you put the sickle to the crop. So what happens if it's not standing? You can't bring that as the sacrifice, or you could. So Tanur Rabbanan, it says in the verse in Vayikra, it says, it's a little bit repetitive. It says, Vim takriv minchas bikurim, that when you're going to bring the first of your grain, and then it says again at the end of the same verse, takriv as minchas bikurecha, to bring the first of your grain. The question is, why is it repeated? Vim takriv minchas bikurim, matam lomer, what's it teaching you? It already says at the end of the verse, it's coming to teach you, lefisha mitzvah omer lahavi min hakama. The mitzvah omer is to bring from the standing crop, the one that's standing. What if it's not standing? If it's not standing, can you bring it from the sheaves that are already on the ground? Or you have to only bring it from the ones you're cutting right now. Talmud lomar takrib. So this word takrib is going to teach us a lot. That no, you bring it no matter what. That's one teaching. That takrib, you bring it even if it's not standing and it's just in sheaves, you bring it. Davar acher, another teaching. Takrib, it says takrib again to teach you lefisha mitzvah havi min alach. The mitzvah is to bring it from lach when it's still moist, it's still wet. Minayim she'lo matzah min alach. What if it's not moist? So then you can still bring it. Yavim min yavesh. You can bring it from dry, from the sheaves that are dry. How do I know? Takrib. It says takrib. Takrib is going to teach us you bring it in whatever state that it's in. So you bring it if it's not standing. You bring it if it's not moist. The mitzvah is to reap it at nighttime. Right, so that would be the second night of Pesach. When we have a Seder, they have Chol HaMoed. So that night, you're going to reap it to be brought the next day, the second day of Pesach. Minayin Shem Niktzar Bayom Kasher. What if you didn't get a chance to reap it at nighttime? You're still cleaning up. And then, so what do? You can bring it in the daytime. How do I know? And how do I know that Vidochas is Shabbos? If it's Shabbos and you can't really do reaping on Shabbos, that's one of the prohibitions. Still, Tamlomer Takriv. Takriv Kolshu, Takriv Mikol Makom, Takriv Afilu B'Shabbos, Takriv Afilu B'Tumah. You bring it in whatever way it is. You bring it no matter what. You bring it even on Shabbos, and you bring it even if it's in a state of impurity. Okay, now this idea that you could reap it in the daytime, even though the mitzvah is to reap it at nighttime, is going to come into contradiction with a Mishnah in Megillah. It says, V'hat Niktzar B'Yom Kasher, our Omer that you're reaping, if you do in the daytime, so the second day of Pesach, instead of the second night of Pesach, it's still going to be good. V'hatzan Kollel Kasher L'Ktziras Omer. The whole night is kosher for Ktziras Omer. Ulahaktir Chalavim Ve'evarim. This is parenthetical, that it's the fats and the limbs of the animals So they were brought at nighttime. So the night is kosher for the reaping of the omer and for the offering up the fats and the limbs of the animals. That's also the whole night is kosher for that. Zeh haklal. This is the general rule. Davar shemitzvaso kol hayom. Something which the mitzvah is to be done in the daytime, kosher kol hayom, can be done the entire day. The general rule, there are obviously exceptions, but davar shemitzvaso balayla, something which is a mitzvah at nighttime, kosher kol halayla, is allowed to be done the entire night. Okay, so what do we see here? We're comparing daytime to nighttime, or better said, nighttime to daytime. Ketani laila dumya diyom. Laila, nighttime is similar to daytime. Madiyom laila low. After laila biyom nami low. Just like the daytime was only in the daytime and not in the nighttime, a nighttime mitzvah is only in the nighttime and not in the daytime. So, on the one hand, we said that our Mishnah says that you can reap it by the daytime, even though it's a nighttime obligation. It says to reap it at nighttime, not in the daytime. And the Mishnah tells us in Megillah, any daytime obligation is only in the daytime and not in the nighttime. And any nighttime obligation is compared to that it cannot be done in the daytime. So how come our Omer, the mitzvah is at nighttime, and yet you can bring it in the daytime? So to that we say, Amar Rabba lo kasha. Rabba says not so difficult. Two opinions. Ha Rebbe, the Ha Rabbi Lazar Reb Shimon. One is Rebbe, and one is Rabbi Lazar, the son of Reb Shimon. So let's see where they said this. The Tanya says in the Brisa, Haya Omer, sorry, he was standing Umakriv Minchas Omer, and he wants to bring the Minchas Omer Venitmes. So now it's the daytime. He's about to bring the Omer, and all of a sudden he finds out that it actually was impure. Somebody brought it by accident to the cemetery, brought it back. Who knows, a creepy crawly jumped on it, whatever it is. Somebody's impure touched it. Either way, it became impure. So what do you do now? Now you're stuck. Because can you reap in the daytime to get a new Omer or not? What do you do? So im yesh acheres, if there is another one, so Omer lo havia acheres takta, bring up your backup supply. So v'im lav, if you don't have another one, he tells him, Omer lo have pikeach v'shasik divrei Rebbe. And if not, then be wise and shush. Shasik is to not say anything. Divrei Rebbe. Meaning because yeah. So meaning according to Rebbe, if you have another one, even if it's attached to the ground, you haven't reaped it yet. If you know that there's others that grew, you can go and reap it and grind it and bring it even in the daytime. Yeah. So that's your first one. And if not, and if you don't have one, then you're going to be wise and shush, meaning that you're going to bring the one that's impure because you're stuck, but you're going to not make a big deal out of it. You're not going to post it on social media because you don't want people to know about it. But what do you see? Rebbe says if you have any other one, even one that's attached to the ground, you can go and bring it. So that would be the opinion of our Mishnah that says you can bring it at the daytime. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon comes in contrast to that. What does he say? Omer benkach ubenkach, Omer lo have pikech v'shasik. He says either way you got to shush, meaning shekola Omer shenikta shelo kimitzvaso pasol. Any Omer that is reaped not according to the way it's supposed to be, according to the mitzvah, is invalid. Meaning you cannot go right now and get yourself reap yourself some daytime barley because the mitzvah was at nighttime. And Rabbi Lazar says anything that the mitzvah was and you don't do it the way it was said is going to be invalid. So the mitzvah was at nighttime. If you do it in the daytime, it's invalid. So you have to remain silent and let them bring this in its state of impurity. And that would be that would be the Mishnah in Megillah. So the Mishnah in Menachos is Rebbe, and the Mishnah in Megillah is Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon. Okay, now Amar Rabbi Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Says Rabbi Bar Chana, and then Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, B'shiddush Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shel Aviv Amra. This that we just stated, that Rabbi Lazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, said that if you reap in the daytime, it is invalid. So he's going in the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, the Rebbe of his father, meaning 24,000 students died. Rabbi Akiva started with 5 new students. One of those 5 students was Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon from Lag BaOmer, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. The regular Rabbi Shimon the Gemara is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon's son was Rabbi Lazar. So this Rabbi Lazar that we said that a daytime reaping is invalid is going like the opinion of his father's Rebbe, Rabbi Akiva. Okay. Where do we see that his father's Rebbe, Rabbi Akiva, said this? Ditnan, the Mishnah says, Klal Amar Rabbi Akiva. Now, this is talking about bris milah. So we know that if you have 2 grandchildren that are boys and you come back to Portland, we know that if you have a bris milah and it falls out on Shabbos, then we do it on Shabbos. Special verse, do it on Shabbos. Even though you're not allowed to cause blood on Shabbos, bris milah we do. The question is, for sure, back in the day, the number of preparatory things had to be done to prepare for the bris milah. So let's say to carry the knife or whatever they would use for the bris milah, right? Mm-hmm. So you can't carry on Shabbos. You had to heat up water for before and after the bris milah for the health of the baby. You can't heat up water on Shabbos, things like that. So the question is, do those things, they're called hechsher, they're those things that are the preparatory things for the mitzvah, do those push away Shabbos? Or you say no, anything that you could do Erev Shabbos, you're not allowed to do on Shabbos because you could have done Erev Shabbos. Mm-hmm. It only pushes off things that are absolute necessities on Shabbos, and they cannot be done earlier, such as causing the blood. That's the bris milah. You can't do it on Friday because that's day 7. So things that are on day 8. So similar thing comes up, by the way, by Yom Tov coming up. There's a big debate about you're allowed to cook on Yom Tov for Yom Tov. What about the preparatory steps? How much could you do? That's a big debate. How much can you? Are the things you could do Erev Yom Tov also allowed on Yom Tov or not? Okay, so Rabbi Akiva said as follows: Kol malacha, any work, she'ef shelo, any prohibition, any prohibited work, she'ef shelo lasoso may erev, that could have been done before day 8 for the bris milah. So erev shelo lasoso erev Shabbos, ein adokas Shabbos, does not push up Shabbos. So that is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Light the fire to make the knife? What do you mean? What, to sharpen the knife? Well, maybe it's part of the debate. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Whenever there's a conflict, when you have let's say Shabbos, and then you have a positive commandment that overrides it, there's 2 classic ways to look at it. Do you view it that when the Torah wrote this mitzvah, so it waived the obligation of Shabbos? In the world of this mitzvah, the Shabbos prohibition is waived. It's not written over there. That's called hutra. In that world, you can do whatever you need for the mitzvah. Pikuach nefesh on Shabbos. Someone's sick, has to go to the hospital. So how much do you do? How much can you do? So maybe you'll say, no, and Shabbos was never prohibited at the expense of someone's life. Therefore, not prohibited. So then whatever you have to do without worrying about it. Or you say, no, the prohibition is still there. We're continuously overriding it. We keep fighting and pushing it away. But that means whatever you need to be pushed away, you push away. Anything preparatory is not necessarily going to help you. Yeah. Okay. So one second. So Rabbi Akiva says that anything that could be done before Shabbos, you can't do on Shabbos. So okay, that's one. That's where Rabbi Akiva said that. So that's one. Number 2 is this Savarla and Rabbi Lazar held like Rabbi Shmuel. What did Rabbi Shmuel hold? That the Amar Tziras HaOmer mitzvah. Rabbi Shmuel said that the reaping of the Omer is a mitzvah. Okay. Ditnan, the Mishnah says in Shvi'is by Shemitah, that Rabbi Shmuel, that I think the verse there compares acts that you can't do either on the seventh year or the seventh day. Maybe on Shabbos, no? Rabbi Shmuel Omer, Ma charish rishus av katzir rishus. There, the Mishnah says that just like plowing is permissible, is voluntary, it's not obligatory. Av katzir rishus. I think it's talking about either Shabbos or Shemitah. Yeah, Shabbos. Yeah. It's Shabbos. So he has a whole exposition that he says that it says on the seventh day you should rest. So it says b'charish u'v'katzir tishbos. You should rest from plowing and reaping to teach you that just like there's no mitzvah to plow, so too reaping is going to be any voluntary reaping you also can't do on Shabbos. So whether you're plowing or you're reaping, and it's voluntary, there's no mitzvah to do it. So then that's prohibited on Shabbos. Yatsa, what's excluded from that? Kitzir ha'omer, the reaping of the omer, shehi mitzvah. The reaping of the omer is a mitzvah, and therefore that's something that you're allowed to do on Shabbos. Now, here's the point they were trying to make. Here we go. And if you're going to tell me that niktzar shelo ki mitzvah kasher, and if you want to tell me that reaping could be done the day before, very good. Why does it push away Shabbos? Amai dachi Shabbos. Just niktzar mi erev Shabbos. Reap it from the day before Shabbos. Ella, it must be from the fact that it's a mitzvah and it pushes away Shabbos. It must be that you can't do before Shabbos. Because if you could do before Shabbos, so then it's like plowing, whatever else you could do before Shabbos. The fact that it's a mitzvah, element of dachi Shabbos, that it pushes away Shabbos, shma mina, that niktzar shaloki mitzvah so puzzle, that if you reap it at a time that's not appropriate for it, then it's going to be invalid. So in our case, so now what do we prove? We proved that number one, anything which can be done erev Shabbos you can't do on Shabbos. That's number one. Number two is we prove that the reaping itself is a mitzvah and pushes away Shabbos. So Rabbi Dovid, the son of Reb Shimon, told us before that the only time any reaping which is not done in the proper time is going to be invalid. It is only one time to do the reaping, and that is on the second night of Pesach. And just like over here, we see that if things that are not a mitzvah don't push away Shabbos, from the fact that it does push away Shabbos, that means that it is a mitzvah and can only be done in that time. So too, the Omer reaping is only, it's a mitzvah, can only be done in its time, and its time is only the second night. If you do it in the second day, then it's going to be invalid. That is Rabbi Dovid, Rabbi Shimon, holding like this Rabbi Akiva, and like Rabbi Shmuel. So, yeah, okay. Fine. So now we're going the other way. You're telling me that Rabbi Dovid, Rabbi Shimon, he held like his father's Rabbi Akiva, and Verebi lav Talmid Rabbi Shimon, and Rebbe that argues on him that says you could reap in the daytime. He's not a student of Rabbi Shimon. Is that true? The Hatanya, we have a brisa saying not that way. Amar Rebbe says, Keshayinu limit in Torah Eitzel Rabbi Shimon. So Rebbe says that when we were learning Torah by Rabbi Shimon in Tekoa, in the town of Tekoa, what would they do? On Shabbos, they would carry a lot of things for the bris milah, even though carrying could be a problem. Hainu malin, we would carry shemen, oil, ve'alontis, some kind of towels to dry ourselves. Meichatzer legag, from the courtyard to the roof. Migag lekarfef. Karfef is like an enclosed area. Umikarfef lekarfef, from one enclosed area to another enclosed area. Ad sha'anu magin l'mayan, sha'anu rochtzen, until we got to the Mayan, to the spring of water, to school. So until we got to you see, they showered in school, not at home, So against our parents' wishes, So the Mayan sha'anu rochtzen, and to the Ma'ayan that we bathed in. So now why are they in need of bathing?
So it's not to transgress Rabbi Shimon's students who carried bath items in the spring were forced to wend their way through a series of contiguous private domains.
So you see that they would carry things. So you see, Rabbi, who holds that reaping in the daytime is allowed. So he holds that when he learned Torah by Rabbi Shimon, they would also carry things on Shabbos, and therefore, what do we see? What did you say? One sec, but there's a little background here. These enclosed areas and the roofs were all, according to Rabbi Shimon and Eruvin, were all considered one domain. So because they're one domain, you'd be allowed to do it. But if it was not one domain, even though you need it on Shabbos now, you could have done it before Shabbos, and therefore it would not be allowed. So Rabbi also holds like this idea that if you can do it before Shabbos, it doesn't push away Shabbos. Says the Gemara, you're right. He's savar like Idach Rabbi Shimon. He holds like the other Rabbi Shimon. What's the other Rabbi Shimon? The Tanya Rabbi Shimon. Bo re'eh, come and see. Kama chaviva mitzvah b'shaita. How beautiful, how beloved is a mitzvah in its proper time. That even though you could do things Erev Shabbos, but they could still push away Shabbos. Bo re'eh, kama chaviva mitzvah b'shaita sharei hektar chalav ve'varim, the burning of the fats and the limbs. Sheirim kol halayla, they're kosher the entire night. And yet, for some of the offerings, they would not wait until the night, meaning until Motzi Shabbos after Havdalah to do it. They would do it on Shabbos. Why? Because how beautiful is the mitzvah in its time. So they wouldn't wait until nighttime. Rather, they would offer it at that time. So Rebbe would hold like this, Rabbi Shimon, that even though things could be done at a different time, but how beautiful is the mitzvah in its time. So we see that you could push away Shabbos, even though it's something which is could be done after Shabbos. Okay. So now that's Rebbe. So that's Rebbe that he also holds like Rabbi Shimon, because Rabbi Shimon holds that some things can push away Shabbos, even though they can be done after Shabbos. So now, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, lo shmilei, did Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon not hold to this idea of chaviva mitzvah b'shaita? Meaning, you Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, you said that you can only do the Omer at nighttime and that's it. And we proved that it's because you hold that anything that can be done in its time can't be done in a different time. So, and that was like your father's Rebbe. But we're saying now that your father, Rabbi Shimon, he said, and Rebbe holds like this, your counterpart holds like this, that sometimes you could also do things in a different time, even though it could be done later, you could still do it now. So one second, Rabbi Lazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, not hold of this concept. So of course he did. So how does he get around this? The difference is that there's no blanket allowance to just do things when you can do it after Shabbos, just because it's beloved. There's an added factor over here, is that you were allowed to shecht it on Shabbos for the communal offerings. That was in the right time. to shecht the offerings you had to do on Shabbos. For the communal offerings, they override Shabbos. So the thought was like this: once you're shechting on Shabbos already, so even the other parts of it, because of how beloved it is to do things in its time, then you could do it. But only because it already had a certain distance, it's already more lenient, since you're allowed to do the first parts of it already on Shabbos. But there's no blanket statement of like, since it's beloved in its time, therefore you could override Shabbos. Okay. Now, Rebbe, don't you agree to that? Hakanami, Daksa Shchit, that's a Shabbos. Rebbe, you agree that this is really a unique case. It's not a blanket allowance that we can do things even though we can do it later. It's because it was shechted. You can shecht the animal on Shabbos. Therefore, it already has a certain dispensation. There we say how beloved is a mitzvah in its time to finish off the burning of the fats. So really, you also agree to that. So Ella Kasavar Rebbe. So what does Rebbe really hold? He really holds as follows: that Ketziras HaOmer Lo Dachya Shabbos. Really, Rebbe holds that that you're right by the fats, special dispensation that we allowed on Shabbos, but by the Omer, by the cutting of the Omer, you can't bring a proof from there for the cutting of the Omer. 1 second. Yeah, by cutting the Omer, just because you can bring the Omer sacrifice on Shabbos, that does not mean that you could reap it on Shabbos. That you don't see, because the reaping could be done before Shabbos. So what does Rebbe hold then? Meaning Rebbe agrees really that the reaping could be done before Shabbos, and therefore it should not be allowed to be done on Shabbos, which shows you that things that are commanded should only be able to be done in its time, which would mean that you can only reap the Omer at the nighttime and not in the daytime. But yet Rebbe holds that you could reap the Omer even in the daytime. So the question is why? If it's because you argue on this principle that things that are commanded in its time could be done at a different time, then you have to prove that. Right now we're assuming that things that are commanded in its time can only be done in its time, and the fats is not a proof. So, yeah. Okay, so what does Rebbe hold? That the reaping of the Omer does not push away Shabbos, because it's something which could be done Erev Shabbos. So, says more on that. 1 second. V'lo, is that really true? The Hatnan, the Mishnah says that the Chachamim Omrim Echad Shabbos ve'Echad Chol Mishalosh. This is our Mishnah earlier, that whether it's Shabbos or weekday, you can go and reap for yourselves 3 measurements, right? To get out of the 3 measurements, 3 stalks to get yourself 1/10 of 1 isaron. So Mishalosh Hayaba. So we say, you could do it on Shabbos. So that's Delo Kirebi. Yeah, you have to say that's not like Rebbe. Rebbe says you can't do it on Shabbos. The Chachamim Omrim Echad Shabbos Echad Chol Bishlosha. They say also that you can do it with 3 people in 3 baskets. Shalosh with 3 baskets. Ubishalosh Magalos and 3 sickles. You can do it on Shabbos. No, Delo Kirebi. Ubishabbos Yomar Lahem Shabbos Zu. And on Shabbos, you could say, look, it's on Shabbos, and we're doing this, we're reaping it. That's also Zu Delo Kirebi. That's also not going to be like Rebbe. Yeah. Okay. So 1 second. So we ended up saying, we're concluding that what? We're concluding that we have a debate, Rebbe and Rabbi Shimon, can you reap in the daytime or not? So Rebbe held you could reap, even though the mitzvah is at nighttime, but you could go and reap in the daytime. And Rabbi Shimon said, no, the command was at nighttime. You can only do things at nighttime. You can only when the mitzvah is at nighttime, you can only do it at nighttime and not in the daytime. So that was that. And we explained, at least of Rabbi Shimon, we explained that just like something which can be done in its time, which cannot be done in its time, doesn't push away Shabbos. So that's so. But if it's a mitzvah, so then it can only be done in its time. So that explained Rabbi Shimon. Now Rebbe, I don't think we explained Rebbe. We explained who's he not, but I don't think we explained who he is. So, one second, to explain. Right, Rebbe. All we know is that Rebbe holds that the reaping of the Omer does not push away Shabbos, but yet he holds you can do it in the daytime. But I don't know if. Yeah, Rebbe holds it does not push away Shabbos, but he holds that you could still bring it in the daytime. Yeah, I don't think we gave an explanation for Rebbe yet. So let's see, maybe it's coming up. So no, yeah, no, it's not. Yeah, don't know. Okay. Either way, niktar bayom kosher. If you reap it in the daytime, it is valid. Vidoches Shabbos. This is like Rebbe, that if you do it in the daytime, it's valid. And sorry, not like Rebbe, and it pushes away Shabbos. Which man shamis leid amar niktar bayom kosher. Who's the opinion that says it reaps in the daytime it's kosher? Rebbe. So vikatani, and it says that it pushes away Shabbos. Vidoches Shabbos. So 1 second. That opinion puts the two together. So my ilav k'tzir, is it not that you can reap and that pushes away Shabbos and that flies in the face of Rebbe? It says no. Lehakrava aval k'tzira lo. You can bring the sacrifice on Shabbos, that everyone agrees to, but l'k'tzira, the reaping, you can't do on Shabbos. So that's how Rebbe would survive that attack. Now the Hatanya of the Brisa says that Rebbe Omer, that Rebbe says, Vayidaber Moshe es Moadei Hashem. Moshe said over the holidays of Hashem. Well, we say this by the Yom Tov David, right before Shemona Esrei. Vayidaber Moshe es Moadei Hashem, El Bnei Yisrael. Yeah. So Vayidaber Moshe es Moadei Hashem. So what's that coming to teach you? Ma Talmud Lomar. What's that coming to teach you? So that chapter in Vayikra just went through all the holidays. And then it says at the end again, oh, by the way, Moshe said over all the holidays. Yeah, we know that already. He went through all of them. Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuos, all of them. So what's it teaching you? Ma Talmud Lomar, lefi shelo lamadnu, ella letamid uPesach. We only knew that the communal offering, the daily tamid, the communal offering, uPesach, shenamar behen bimo ado. You have to bring it in its time. In its time no matter what. Bimo ado v'afilu b'Shabbos, even on Shabbos. Bimo ado v'afilu b'tumah, even in a state of impurity. How do you know shar karbanos atzibur minayin? The rest of the communal sacrifices can be brought Shabbos, can be brought in a state of purity, in a state of impurity. Minayin Talmud Lomar elu tasel Hashem b'mo'adechem. The verse says in Bamidbar that you can do these in their times, in the plural. So that's how you know that all the communal offerings can be brought on Shabbos and can be brought in a state of impurity. How do you know to include the Omer? Minayin l'rabos Omer, our topic. The hakriv imo shtei alechem. Sorry. Minayin l'rabos Omer, the hakriv imo. Minayin l'rabos Omer. Minayin l'rabos Omer. The hikriv imo shtei alechem, the hakriv imahen. A little repetitive to me. Yeah, how do you know that you can bring that including the Omer, and you can bring with it, and understand you can bring with it with this? So Talmud Lomar, Vayidaber Moshe es Moadei Hashem. That Moshe said over the holidays of Hashem, meaning hakasuf kava moed lekulan. There was one. We established one set time for the holiday for everything. So meaning everything is going to have to be brought in its time. That includes the Omer, and that includes the Shtei Alechem. Now, says the Gemara, hold on, Lemai. What are you telling me that it can break Shabbos? If your topic of conversation here is the actual offering up a sacrifice, what in the world do the two breads on Shabbos have to do with that? You're not offering the two breads up on the altar. The Kohanim are eating it. So what are you telling me? You should know the Omer and the two breads can be brought even in its time. What does that mean? If it's for the bringing of a sacrifice, well, the Shtei Alechem and Ekrav Ninu, you don't bring those, the Kohanim eat it. Elab Shita, you're talking about the grinding and the sifting. Litrino v'harkada, the grinding and the sifting, that you could do even on Shabbos. V'tikivasa gabe Omer l'ktzira, and similarly, by the barley, you can go and reap it even on Shabbos. You go cut it off on Shabbos. The kadach is a Shabbos. So what do you see? This is also a you see that according to this that you could do the reaping on Shabbos, not like Rebbe. So Rebbe says, "Lo, Omer lahakrava." Split the two. The Omer, when it said you do it on Shabbos, it meant the sacrificing, you're putting up on the altar on Shabbos. That's what it means. It does mean reaping. V'shtei halechem, and the two breads, what it means is you could bake it. You could bake it on Shabbos. Now, this price is the opinion of Rebbe, who's Rebbe against himself. So that's how Rebbe would learn that. The Omer you could bring up on Shabbos. The two breads you could bake on Shabbos, but not sift and grind. So what's unique about the baking? The Kasavar Rebbe, Taner Mekadesh, that the oven sanctifies the bread, and if you were to break it from yesterday, the Ape Lam Esmo Ifsale Belina, if you would bake it from yesterday, then it would be invalid like other sacrifices by being left overnight. You can't leave them overnight. So you have to do it today. Since you have to do it today, that Rebbe allows. The reaping you could have done yesterday. So on that we say, the Savar Rebbe Taner Mekadesh, a oven really sanctifies that the lambs of the Atzeres, they sanctify the bread when they get shechted, not when the bread's put in the oven. The shechita, when you shech the lambs, that sanctifies the bread. So, Ketzad, how do you do it? Shachtan l'shman v'zarak dam l'shman, when you shecht it for the right reasons, and you throw the blood and you apply the blood for the right reasons. Kadesh alechem, the bread is sanctified. Shachtan l'shman v'zarak dam l'shman, lo kadesh alechem. If you do it for the wrong reasons, whether you throw the blood or whether you slaughter it, the bread is not sanctified. Shachtan l'shman v'zarak dam l'shman, slaughter for the right reason, for Shavuos, if you apply the blood for something else, you have the wrong intent. Kadosh ve'eno kadosh. It's going to be kadosh ve'eno kadosh. It's going to be sanctified and not sanctified, right? That we had earlier. That's referring to sanctified and not sanctified. Meaning you can't use it for personal usage, but yeah, that's earlier on 47. A. Yeah, it's holy, but you don't.
He slaughters the lambs for their own sake. Slaughters the blood.
Right, it's holy, but you still can use it for personal use, maybe by redeeming it. So that's the Rebbe. Rabbi Shimon Omer laolam eino kadosh ad sheyishchal l'shman yizak dam l'shman. He argues and says it's only once you slaughter it and apply the blood. If you're missing one of those two qualifications, then it's not going to be kadosh at all. No middle ground of holy but not holy. So what do you see that Rebbe holds? Not the baking, putting the oven sanctifies. Slaughtering sanctifies. What it means is, it's not that the slaughtering sanctifies it, but it designates the bread to be for these lambs. So not that it's kadosh, that it sanctifies it, but rather it designates it. The sanctification really comes later when you put it into the oven. And that's why that has to be done on Shabbos. That could be done on Shabbos also, because you can't do it before Shabbos. The price that says it's sanctified. No, that doesn't. Not that it sanctifies it. It establishes that these bread and these lambs, they're going to come as a full package deal. Okay, good. Hajj and Allah.